Pursuing the path of a physician gives us access to the intimate moments in life, such as when death is near and needs to be discussed. We're in a position of both privilege and power. It's a privilege to partner with the patient and their loved ones to establish goals of care. We get a chance to listen to how others value and see living. At the same time, we're in an inevitable position of power to influence the decisions that come up. We know what it means to put someone through a course of intensive care, the stress it puts on the body to intubate someone, and what deep sedation means in altering a person's ability to live. What is asked of us in these moments is to navigate these complex demands in a way that balances listening to the patient and informing them with our objective professional opinion. In these positions, I wonder how relevant it is to think about the right versus wrong way to be a doctor. And yet, as an eager medical student, there's always a desire to learn only what is right. Mr. W was a patient I met during my second ED shift in recess who passed away the following morning. His hospital course taught me about providing meaningful care for someone whose prognosis changes suddenly for the worse. Mr. W came into the ED because of cellulitis gnawing away at his leg. At first, it seemed likely he would be leaving the hospital after getting a course of antibiotics, or at worst, after amputation of the infected leg. The infection seemed to be resolving, until it wasn't. His lactate levels started escalating by the hour, and it soon became clear that he wouldn't be leaving the hospital. There was very little time between receiving the lab results and when the attending physician sat Mr. W's wife down to inform her that her husband was dying. As quickly as we shifted as a medical team, so did Mrs. W. She had been ready for this. Despite how unexpected the change in prognosis was, she was ready. She said it was from all the times that they were told he had a rotten heart and they found themselves in similar situations. But there was more to it than just familiarity with the situation. To me, I saw bravery, courage, strength, and love. I was in awe of the way she asked the questions she needed to ask to understand the quickly evolving situation and the quality of life her husband would enjoy with full interventions versus letting him go. She asked us, if full interventions are taken, will he still be able to enjoy reading and writing to the level that he has been? Because that's what he loves to do, and he's really good at it. Unfortunately, he just won't have the same quality of living. She then proceeded to methodically call her son and daughter and the cardiologist who they'd trusted for years. There was a moment where she became flustered and angry at herself for not bringing the wallet that had the phone number for the cardiologist, but then she resumed without missing a beat to compose herself. At the same time, I watched and listened to the attending physician navigate the conversation in a way that was direct and present. He matched where Mrs. W was in her process, whether it was being firm and asking her to listen to him present the organized information first without interruption, or in offering to speak with the cardiologist. He gave her the space to make the decisions and direct how Mr. W's care would continue. It was clear to me that what the attending physician valued himself was the pursuit of comfort care. He said to me, "No one really wants to see their loved ones hooked up to machines and intubated." For this patient, he was right, but it really didn't matter whether he was right or wrong because he never pushed his opinion on the patient or their family. He gave them the information, remained present, and gave them space. Mr. W and his family ultimately decided together on their own that what they wanted was to enjoy his last moments as peacefully as possible and forewent any interventions. We stopped by the ICU after the shift around 2 a.m. that night. Mr. W's family was at the bedside. His wife had been by her husband's side since admission for the last 10 hours. There were no tears or physical grieving. There wasn't lightness, but there wasn't heaviness either. There was a noticeable air of peace in the room, and that was special to witness. We paid our respects and left. The next morning, I woke up and searched Mr. W. in Epic. Deceased, in red capital letters. It was my first time seeing an update like this on a patient's chart. The matter-of-factness was jarring given I'd taken such a liking to the elderly couple. I'd stood at the head of the bed as the medical team explained to Mr. W. his change in prognosis and tuned into the way Mrs. W. interacted with her sick husband. She was his advocate, making sure her husband was listening as he waxed and waned. She paused the room to verify that the decisions she was making on his behalf were in fact what they had previously discussed regarding his wishes. In the immediate moments after Mrs. W. was first told that her husband likely wouldn't make it, I asked her if there was anything I could do to help. She said, "You mean like emotional support?" I wasn't confident I could give her that, but I wanted so badly to help, and that hesitation translated awkwardly as, "Whatever you need." She didn't respond to this, but muttered quietly under her breath, "It's so cold in here." Bringing her extra blankets was one thing I could do without hesitation. I could give her a pen and paper to write down the phone number for the cardiologist, assist her with her walker, and bring her chair closer to her husband's bedside. Mr. W. needed to use the urinal, so I helped him. As I held the urinal, he caught a glance at the tattoo of marigolds on my forearm. He then grabbed my arm and pulled it only an inch away from his face, studying the pointillism work that created the gradient of the petals. He smiled. "Well, isn't that beautiful?" It was the one moment I felt like I was interacting with him where he wasn't agitated from the pain of his ailing body or the discomfort of being in the hospital. A New York Times article in tribute to Mr. W. and his legacy was shared with those of us on his care team in the ED. That legacy was a bookstore of cookbooks in our neighborhood. The window display of the bookstore was filled with messages from friends and customers commenting on the profound impact he had on the food and cooking community. I felt compelled to read every message in the window, wanting to know who this person was who I encountered on his last day of life and had the privilege to be on the care team for. He was a trailblazer. He was kind and giving. He was filled with a passion and love for food and cooking and shared his knowledge widely. He was a champion for others on their road to success. He was indiscriminatory with who he helped. Knowing how many people cared deeply for Mr. W., I was happy he got to spend his last moments as peacefully as possible. That peace was a result of the physician letting the family lead with their decision, and the family knowing what Mr. W. wanted. It was the result of the hospital's resources seamlessly coming together to grant the wishes of a patient and family in a way that we more often than not fail to do for other patients. It was all the little things that came together that would be impossible to express in words. What I got to witness was peace before death, and that felt right to learn as a medical student.